it's a song about someone's accused of murdering women, but didn't
but
murder
then
a
he
woman.
follows it up by saying it's all because of you, presumably the murder victim. Hello, and welcome to Maiden Voyages, a podcast where we delve into every Iron Maiden album in chronological order, yes, even the bad ones. Over the course of the series, we'll examine the band's history, the making of the albums, and then we'll probably get lost somewhere in the weeds of heavy metal minutiae. I'm joined as ever by Blev, a historian of sorts and a lover of Iron Maiden, and I'm Sam, a writer of sorts, and I only like Iron Maiden as a friend. This week, we'll pick up where we left off last time, having examined the run-up to Iron Maiden's second album, Killers, in frankly excruciating detail. We're now ready to talk about the music.
Into the album itself then. The tracks. Side 1, track 1. The Ides of March. Thoughts? An instrumental. A short instrumental.
It's really superfluous.
Oh, it's all right, isn't it?
It's fine. Like,
it's quite atmospheric.
So my notes are literally, it's fine, but pointless.
Oh, okay.
For me, it kind of sets the wrong tone for the album.
That's a fair point, yeah.
In that, like, it's...
Grand
Well, it's not even that it's grand. To me, it's just a little bit boring.
Oh.
And especially considering the strength of the next track, I just can't help but feel like if the album had started on what becomes track 2, that would be such a phenomenal, punchy start.
Okay.
Versus this slightly pompous instrumental that goes nowhere.
Wow. Okay.
Soz.
Cool. Well, when I saw Maiden on the Early Days tour in 2005 and they headlined Reading, they had that as their opening backing music coming on, and that felt great. It feels like
it's Doctor.
Well, no, but Doctor first, and then
okay.
into the intro track, whatever that might be, and it was the Ides of March, and it just felt so. And for people who like this era of Maiden, it was just like, yes, here we go. And of course, that show was all the first 4 albums. So there's plenty of stuff on this album, and I think it's a nice, quite evocative, stirring. I mean, superfluous to an extent.
I just think it's a little throwaway. Okay.
Another fun fact about the Ides of March for you is that.
How fun are these facts?
Oh, this fact is fun. This on a scale of 1 to fun, this is fun fact. The Ides of March. Had you have been a fan of Maiden's peers, the band Samson, another modern band, you would have essentially already heard this song.
Oh.
Because on Samson's second album that came out in 1980, because Samson were a little bit ahead of the game, they got their first album out in 79.
Yeah.
On their second album, also their first album to feature a certain vocalist, Bruce, a.k.a. Bruce Dickinson, a.k.a. neither of those are his real name. I can't remember what it is now. But there's a song on that Samson album, Headlong, I believe it's called, or Head On, I believe it's called. There's a song on that album called Thunderburst,
which
is essentially exactly the same as the Ides of March.
That's weird.
Well, it is weird until you think Samson's drummer, a chap called Thunderstick, who is most famous for performing in a gimp mask, that was his thing, had been briefly in Iron Maiden in the late 70s.
Right.
And had seemingly taken that song with him to Samson. And on the Samson record, it's credited to all the members of Samson and Steve Harris.
Right.
It's not clear. I've never heard Steve address this publicly, so it's not clear if they got his permission or they went ahead and did it anyway and just gave him the writing credit.
Yeah.
But Iron Maiden's version, which is essentially identical, is just credited to Steve Harris. So make of that what you will in terms of who wrote it. So actually, Thunderburst, essentially Samson's version of the Ides of March, Bruce Dickinson has a writing credit on it.
That's so weird.
It's fun fact, right?
Fun's a stretch, but it's
really
a fact.
Fun.
I'll take it.
It's a fact. That's no one's doubting that. So, Ides of March, it's only a minute and a half anyway, so whether you like it or not, it doesn't really matter.
It's innocuous, it's
just
fine.
Gets you in the mood. It just reminds you the record's on, you're going, oh, okay, here's some quintessential...
I think I would be aware the record that I've just put a stylus and needle onto is on.
I don't know, maybe you've been temporarily distracted. You're like, oh, there's twin guitar harmonies, lots of quintessential Maiden-y things. I'm listening to Iron Maiden album. Into track 2, Wrathchild.
Absolute banger.
Ah,
Like,
yeah.
I just think... I think that's part of the reason why I don't like Ides of March very much, is that if the album had just kicked off with Wrathchild, it would be such a statement beginning. Like that thick, slinking bass line that starts off the song, the menacing riff, the sort of twirling bent guitar leads. It's all just phenomenal. I love that song.
Menacing is the word, isn't it? And this will come up again, not throughout, but at points in this record. There is an element of Killers that is just Maiden being a bit nasty. There's something kind of quite threatening about it, and like Paul Di'Anno's vocal. Paul Di'Anno can do that better than anyone else who sung for Maiden.
Yeah, I mean, Wrathchild is such a great showcase of Paul Di'Anno's voice, in that he sounds gritty but powerful and melodic, and he sounds so much stronger than he did on the first album. I mean, like,
he does actually, yeah. No, well, I think he sounds great in the first album, but he really does sound amazing on Killers.
Yeah, and weirdly, actually, I found listening to Wrathchild, like when I revisited this album a couple of weeks ago, Paul Di'Anno sounds a lot more like Blaze Bayley than I ever really quite clicked until that point. And yeah, there's something about that low sort of baritone-y grit and almost punkish delivery that just comes across so great on this song.
Yeah, definitely.
Love it.
Blaze Bayley, who would, if you happen to have listened to this podcast without
Spoiler
knowing
alert.
anything about Iron Maiden, he will pop up in the 1990s when we have to listen to those albums and talk about them. But yeah, Wrathchild is absolutely phenomenal. And of course, you would have heard this song already if you've been paying attention, because it appears on the Metal for Mothers compilation album, albeit a different earlier recording.
Actually, I haven't heard that earlier recording. I should check that out.
Yeah, you should. It's the same song, but it's a weaker version. Like the production's not as good. It doesn't sound.
Is there much arrangement difference?
No, not especially. Not. I haven't listened to it for a little while, but not. If memory serves me, it's because this song was such a mainstay of Maiden set up until this point. They've been playing the song since the late 70s, virtually every night. So you would have had to have somehow managed to avoid seeing Maiden live or hearing any of the compilations to not know Wrathchild. But it's a phenomenal version, and also the only song from this record that has really become a mainstay of Maiden's live sets.
Yeah, that's fair. Although the next song often crops up, right?
No.
No?
It's been played on one tour in about the last 20 years.
Wow. Don't I look the fool?
But yeah, let's talk about the next song, because it is an app. It's so far, okay, differing opinions about the intro. Okay, I'm going to say 2 out of 2. And
you're wrong, but
straight
okay.
into track 3, Murders in the Rue Morgue, which is one of the, as we discovered, one of the new songs. This was sort of purposefully written with this album in mind. What do you reckon? Murders in the Rue Morgue.
So this also is an absolute banger.
Yeah.
I adore this song. I think the sort of that slow build up of the intro sort of arpeggios into heavy riffs and soaring guitar leads just sets like such a great pace, and then everything erupts with Clive Burr's like crazy drum fill.
Yeah. Like
hitting the snares crazily. I'll stop saying crazy.
He's crazy, Clive Burr. Whoa, that's snare drum.
No, but so it erupts with Clive Burr's drum fill, which is fantastic, and then the pace picks up. My only criticism of the song is it has, and this is very petty, but it definitely has slightly too many verses. It just keeps coming back to the verse like 5 times.
I've not thought about that. But
which never used to jar with me. Like, this is one of the few songs I knew of this album really well, but when I was listening to it in the context of the album, I definitely noticed it and felt a bit odd about it. But minor gripe, it's a fantastic song. Definitely one of the highlights of the album.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And interestingly, this song, we said it has sadly been the only time I've seen Maiden play this live, and the only time they've played it live since Bruce rejoined in 2000 is they played it on the Early Days tour, and they opened with Murders in the Rue Morgue.
That's cool.
It's phenomenal. And they even actually opened with Murders in the Rue Morgue on the tour supporting Number of the Beast, on the Beast of the Road tour. They opened with Murders in the Rue Morgue. That is also cool. Yeah, it is cool, isn't it? But yeah, then it sort of disappears from the live set largely. I'm not sure if they ever did it with Blaze. Maybe.
I can see his voice working really well for it.
It would, yeah. It would certainly work better than when he tries to do a lot of the Bruce stuff. But yeah, it's another one of the songs that is sadly largely disappeared from Maiden live sets. I doubt we'll see it again.
Yeah,
Sad to
that's
say.
a real shame.
It is a shame. And some more of Steve's literary-inspired lyrics to go alongside Phantom of the Opera.
Oh, interesting. What is it based on?
It's an Edgar Allan Poe short story, I believe, Murders in the Rue Morgue.
Okay. Because it is one of several songs on this album that establishes a theme of murdering women, which is not something I quite clicked about the album until a couple of days ago when I was listening to this, and then another song, Innocent Exile, later on. It's just a lot of women murdering.
Yeah, there is. The fact it's based on a Poe short story, you could maybe
that makes it slightly less weird.
You could give Steve maybe a bit of a pass on that one, but nonetheless, he has drawn influence from that. But there are lots of short stories about lots of things. And he picked one about someone murdering women. And I was like, okay, fair enough. But no, amazing song, high tempo, high energy. I almost wonder if I were to do the track listing of this, I think I'd almost put Murders in the Rue Morgue first into Wrathchild.
Yeah, I could see that working really well.
Because like you said, that arpeggio, clean guitar bit, the build-up, it's a little bit... I'm not saying it's better than Wrathchild, but the pace is more...
No,
I'm the opening track pace,
really well, and that way you get rid of Ides of March.
Well, I'd
get rid of Ides of March.
I'll find somewhere else for it. Ides of March can be opener for side B. So we'll pop it there.
As a slight tangent, the first time I heard Murders in the Rue Morgue was a cover. It was In Flames doing a cover of it.
I did not know there's an In Flames cover of Murders in the Rue Morgue.
And it's quite early In Flames, so the vocals are much more death metal growly.
Wow, that sounds good.
It's a great cover, but it was in the days of LimeWire, so it was labelled Cradle of Filth, Murders in the Rue Morgue.
Oh dear.
And obviously being 15 at the time, I was like, that sounds metal as hell. I'm going to download that.
Having said that, Cradle of Filth would do a good cover of Murders in the Rue Morgue.
Do they?
No, they would do.
Oh, they would do. Yeah.
You know, but get that clean thing on like a creepy organ, like.
Yeah.
And then,
I mean, Cradle of Filth covers are fantastic.
Yeah.
But that's a whole different podcast.
Indeed. Look forward to that coming out now. The Cradle of Filth covers pod.
Listen to us talk about Daddy Filth loving the 80s.
Yeah. So we've got Ides of March, Wrathchild, Murders in the Rue Morgue. Track 4. Another Life, which again is another very old song, goes back to about 77, there or thereabouts.
Yeah.
And again, this was also excavated for the early days tour in 2005.
Oh, really?
And of the surprise songs.
I'm surprised that came back into the fold.
Back with Bruce, and it was great seeing it, because you think, wow, I never thought I'd see it.
Yeah.
But it's a very 70s Maiden song, isn't it?
Yeah, I think...
bluesy intro.
It's a song that when I first heard it, I didn't particularly like it. And then the more I listened to it, the more it's started to warm on me. But it is a little bit of mediocrity in comparison to to the previous two tracks.
Yeah, I would stop short of the word mediocrity, but
Yeah, maybe that's me being a bit harsh. But you can like mediocre things.
Yeah, it's
as I said, I like it.
It's enjoyable.
I don't think it's brilliant, but it does have one thing that I find really interesting about it is its drum intro. In that, I'm pretty sure Metallica just steal the drum intro for Motor Breath.
Oh yeah, just like the toms, the yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
It is 100% the same fill. It's just Lars copping killers.
Interesting. I'd not made that connection. Yeah, you're probably right. It's. I also went a weirdly hard rock bluesy riff for Maiden.
Yeah, it's definitely.
It's like Jimi Hendrix or something.
Style Maiden. It also has quite bad lyrics in that, like the opening line is something like, "As I lay here, lying in my bed."
Yeah, and is it like
you can't
sweet
use the
voices
verb
running
lie twice?
Yeah, as I lay here. Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. He's already established he's lying in his...
We know you're in the bed, Paul.
Yeah. It should be as I lay here in my bed. Yeah. But he's... Yeah, fair point.
Again, I'm being a pedant.
No, but it's...
That's all I can bring to this podcast.
We should pick Paul Diano up on his
Well, I
sentence
assume it's
structure.
Steve's lyric.
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, good point. Yeah, enjoyable. Another Life.
Yeah.
Enjoyable. I like it.
It's a solid 7 out of 10.
Yeah, to be fair, I wouldn't argue that. It's also one of a few weird songs in this album that don't have choruses.
Yeah.
there's just no chorus. It's just that all the chorus
It's all
is just
verse, baby.
Yeah, it's just hey, here's a lead guitar chorus. It's the na 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 na.
Are you going to add a hook? No, absolutely
no.
not.
That's all you're getting. It's like okay. And talking of instrumentals, then we go into but we've already had the Ides of March, but I guess the proper instrumental song is Genghis Khan, which it's hard not to compare it to Transylvania off the debut album, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think listening to Genghis Khan made me change my view on Transylvania, in that it made me think, actually, although Transylvania might not be for me, it's chock full of iconic riffery. Whereas Genghis Khan, bar one riff that starts to sound like a proto "Hallowed Be Thy Name" in it, it's just not a memorable instrumental.
Yes, and the other thing about Genghis Khan also has a riff. I wonder if it's the one you're talking about.
It's literally like yeah.
And I was thinking, yeah, it is a lot.
Which is a very Maiden-y trope for the next few albums.
Yes, and actually, the song I was thinking of it's that riff that's slowed down, but in Infinite Dream. So it's like and it's. I was thinking, oh yeah, Steve has clearly just taken that and just slowed it down a bit. But you're right. I think that variations that riff pop up a lot.
Definitely
in the Maiden discography.
It's like the Kai Hansen guitar lead break that appears in every Halloween and Gamma Ray song for 30 years. It's great.
The only other thing, well, I like Genghis Khan, but it suffers in comparison to Transylvania for me. It's enjoyable.
It's a waste of a track.
Oh, okay. Steady on. Jesus. Again, remember the email address if you'd like to feel some abuse in Sam's direction.
Excuse me.
I think Clive Burr's drum performance in Genghis Khan, though, is phenomenal. There's some...
I think in general, Clive Burr's performance across the album is such a step up from the first album.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about this more later on, I'm sure, but there's so much more of an imprint of Clive Burr's drumming personality than there is on the debut. It's noticeable on every track.
Yeah, it is. That's the thing. It's like, it's noticeable, but not in a way that's intrusive, because whatever he's doing feels perfectly complimentary. And yet, also, as someone who used to play a bit of drums, you think, oh, that's not necessarily the normal thing you do. That's not the default riff for the default pattern.
Yeah.
But it just works so brilliantly. And yeah, he's phenomenal, Genghis Khan. So to take us to the end of side A, we go into track 6. They're really cramming them in. But that's the other thing worth pointing out this album is, by the standards of what Maiden would go on to do, we've got 10 songs here, most of which are under 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So quite a lot of them are under 4.
That's a lot of restraint.
If
only they exercised that in the last few years.
We'll tune into the Senjutsu episode for our thoughts about that. So we finish track 6, Innocent Exile.
Great song.
Oh, excellent. I'm glad you like it. Yeah, I really like
good
Exile.
heavy riffs. I think Paul Di'Anno puts in a fantastic performance. That sort of swaggering main riff is super heavy, and Paul's voice suits it brilliantly.
Yeah, I really like Innocent Exile as well. That was sort of like slight groove to that.
You can feel the energy buzzing off of it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Martin Birch doing a phenomenal job of the production there. Again, another song where they've sort of gone chorus. Nah, stop it.
Choruses are for Def Leppard.
But even without the chorus, there is just that really cool bit, that instrumental break, which is just the da na 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 da na na, which I really enjoy. I'm glad you like Innocent Exile.
I really like Innocent Exile.
I wasn't sure what
it is. The second song on the album about murdering women.
Is it really? I've never delved into the lyrics.
Yeah, there's in fact, I will
My life is so empty, nothing to live for. It's classic. It's probably Steve at Paul Di'Anno Fair of like, I'm a down and out, one from town to town, gonna murder a woman.
They say I killed a woman.
Oh, because I did.
Know it isn't true. They're just trying to frame me, and all because of you. Yeah.
Well, he said, Sam, it's a song about someone's accused of murdering women, but didn't murder
but then
a
he
woman.
follows it up by saying it's all because of you, presumably the murder victim.
Well, maybe, or
I mean,
maybe.
I've jumped into conclusions.
Yeah.
I'm not a gumshoe detective here, but yeah, it just stood out to me.
Yeah, again touches upon a theme that is
Like
undeniable when we get to the next track.
I mean, I think the thing is, like many songs between the previous album and this album, it's sort of about nothing.
Yeah.
It's just sort of a vague theme of I'm on the run.
Yeah.
Ho-ho.
I'm a man.
I'm a cheeky lad.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, and if, bear in mind how old Steve Harris was, literally a teenager when most of these lyrics would have been written, so it's fairly to be expected that you just have hey, here's nondescript hard rock lyric.
I think it's clear in terms of lyrics, Iron Maiden hadn't really found their voice yet.
Oh yeah. I mean, like we said, there are things that are pointing in that direction, but you're right, in general, we're still getting there. So side A, a strong first half. Moving on to side B with track 7, Killers, the title track.
So this is a song that the first time I heard it, I couldn't really remember it afterwards. But after a couple of listens to the album, I think this is probably like one of my favourite tracks off of it.
Had you heard the song Killers before?
No.
What?
Somehow I'd never heard the song Killers before.
Oh my God, wow.
And like the mix of like the really heavy triplets and just that sort of harmonic descending thing,
which I was trying to think. It's like, okay, we live in a post Van Halen's first album world, which is what
someone's listened to Atomic Punk.
Well, funnily enough, Maiden used to cover Ain't Talking About Love in their early sets in the late 70s.
What?
I would love to hear Maiden cover Ain't Talking About Love by Van Halen. That would be phenomenal. But yeah, that is a very Van Halen inspired thing. But even then, to make it such an intrinsic part of the riff.
Yeah, it's not something.
Great.
It's not a guitar technique that appears very often in Maiden's discography at all.
No, not at all. No.
But yeah, I think Killers is a great song. And it also made me realize some other things about another song. But let's hear your opinion first, and then I'll tell you.
Well, yeah, I love the song Killers, and for me, at no point before or ever again do Maiden sound this. The word's already come up. We keep saying it, but menacing.
Yeah,
definitely. They never sound this vicious or genuinely threatening, and a lot of that is because Paul Di'Anno, and you've spoken about him. He's an incredibly talented man, but in his own way, an incredibly flawed man. I mean, to the extent he is a piece of work, right? But that kind of gives him a genuinely threatening quality. He is the kind of man who walks around with like a flick knife on him.
Yeah.
And his delivery, there are parts of it that are almost slightly border on a death metal rasp, the way he clips those words, like, his eyes burn a hole in your back. There's that.
Yeah, I think death metal is pushing it.
No, but you know what I mean? His voice
there's
distorts
that bite
and crackles
to the vocal delivery, which is great.
And also, it's a wonderful I've listened to this album so many times, but I'd not noticed this the falsetto bit he does at the end. But it's like, I've done it again, and he really goes for that falsetto bit at the end, and it's a masterclass from Paul Di'Anno, I think.
And I know we kind of discussed the Live at the Rainbow version earlier, and it being sort of a prototype version lyrically, but it's still, that performance is fantastic. But also what I found interesting about that performance is obviously on the recording, you can kind of hear Steve Harris's backing vocals, and then watching the Live at the Rainbow clip, it's Steve Harris doing the backing vocals. That just stood out to me simply because at that point they have Adrian Smith in the band, who ostensibly just has a fantastic voice. Yeah, and he's not doing backing vocals at that point, which is a shame.
I didn't notice that. Yeah,
it's just all Steve.
It's doubly weird.
And Steve sounds fine. Yeah, but Adrian Smith will up the backing vocal game of the band shortly.
Yeah, and Adrian Smith had been the singer in his band, as well as the guitar player. He was the singer in Urchin as well as the guitarist. That is interesting. So Killers, banger.
So my tangent for Killers is, again, we have to address being a recovering Iced Earth fan, but the song Colours by Iced Earth is thematically just a complete rip-off of this song.
Yeah.
And I never quite realised it before, but like to the extent that the lyrics have a lot of commonality. The song Colours cops the line, eyes burn down your back, and uses it. It opens with the lyric like you're walking in the subway. You walk through the subway, his eyes burn a hole in your back. Walking in the subways, hello sir, their eyes burn down your back.
Yeah.
There's a lot of lyrical theft. And then it occurred to me that the only reason that song is called Colours is because it sounds like Killers.
Yeah, because there are no references to actual colours in that song.
But as someone who'd never really heard the song Killers before, I might have heard it in passing. That was a weird realization.
Yeah, that must have been. Yeah, no, they are very, lyrically at least, very similar indeed.
And like Colours is such a triplet-based heavy song. Well, not triplet, like gallopy riff heavy song that, it's just definitely very Killers inspired.
Definitely. It's a shame that Killers, again, doesn't really hang around in the live set that long.
Yeah.
They play it again when Bruce is in the band. It's one of the main songs that's played on the 7th tour of the 7th Tour Tour.
What a tour name.
Oh, what a tour name. I mean, what a tour. What a year to be alive. But, so they play it in 88, and there's a version that appears on the Made in England concert video and soundtrack with Bruce singing. And then it's dropped. They didn't even bring it back for the early days tour. So it's probably been... I'm not sure if they played it when Blaze was in the band. Would make sense,
I'm surprised
But it hasn't been played for the best part of 25 years now.
It's surprising it didn't come up on the early days tour because it's the title track.
Yeah, it makes sense, wouldn't it?
Iconicism to it. But then, having said that, I hadn't heard it till 2 weeks ago.
Well, yeah, that is mad. So if you haven't heard Killers, track 7, then presumably you definitely not heard track 8. Prodigal. The song's called Prodigal Son. What did you make of Prodigal Son, which is the outlier in this album, isn't it?
It is absolutely outlier, and for whatever reason, I quite like it, but I think it's deeply flawed. So to me, it has a really 70s AOR prog vibe to it. It sounds like Styx or Grand Funk Railroad doing I'm Your Captain. Like, it has that kind of vibe to me, and it definitely outstays its welcome. But I do quite like it just because it's Maiden flexing a side that they will basically never flex again.
Yeah, the only other reference point for this is Journeyman off Dance of Death in 2003.
Yeah, but even Journeyman is a much more acoustic-y ballad.
Yeah.
Whereas this is...
It's a much better song, Journeyman.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. But this is much more spacey and 70s, in the same way that we talked about Strangeland sort of being Planet Caravan-y. This is the Planet Caravan of Killers, but they've leaned heavily into, and it's going to be weird and indulgent.
Yeah. I think this is going to be one of those rare occasions where you might actually like a Maiden song more than I do. Because...
I mean, that's not that surprising for this song.
Yeah,
I can definitely see why most rational thinking people would not enjoy this song.
But the thing is the influences I hear, like you said, Styx or Wishbone Ash for me, and sort of pastoral English prog of the early to mid-70s, I like that stuff. I just think Maiden they don't do it well. I think there's a thing in Maiden's career where Maiden try and flex their muscles, like you said, in a way that, hey, we can do more than heavy metal. And it's like, you can but you're not very good at it. Like, this is the problem. And when I first heard this album, I was like 13, 14, I think for the reasons you said, I quite liked Prodigal Son. I thought, this is different. When I listen to it now, I've been listening to this, and for the most part, really enjoying listening to this a lot in the run-up to this. Every time I get to this, the more I listen to this record, I just go, oh, go away, Prodigal Son. Like, it's over 6 minutes long. Just bugger off. Like, I just really cannot be bothered with this past sort of... And also, it's sandwiched between Killers and Purgatory, which we're going to discuss in just a sec. But it's this real...
It's a pastiche of 70s
the life
rock
out of the record at a point where it is actually really amping up. Because Killers, Purgatory, Drifter, well, for me, spoiler alert, amazing run of 3 songs. And then Prodigal Son just sits there like this sort of like, oh, for God's sake, just... Like I said, it's not bad, it's just really perfunctory.
As I said, it definitely really outstays its welcome.
Yeah. And onto the penultimate track, track 9, Purgatory.
Just before that, actually, we should acknowledge that some versions of the album have Twilight Zone.
Oh, is that where this would appear?
That's where it is on the 90s CD version I have. But we'll address the song afterwards.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because
I just wanted to note it.
Yeah, in the UK, that was just a single, as we'll discuss. But like the debut album, where Sanctuary's added for the American version, at the time, if you bought Killers in the States in 81, it came with Twilight Zone on the actual album there as well.
I tell a lie, I looked at my notes again. Twilight Zone was actually in place of Prodigal Son. Well, before Prodigal Son.
Oh, right. I was going to say that'd be, in my eyes, that'd be a much better album.
No, it doesn't replace it. It's preceding it.
Just preceding it. Oh, fair enough. Okay.
But anyway, Purgatory.
Purgatory. I bloody love Purgatory. I think it's great.
Oh, dear.
Watch yourself here, Sam. I think Purgatory is one of the... Is you know, if people were to ask me what is the underrated Maiden song that most people, even Maiden fans, haven't heard, Purgatory would be one of the songs I go to. I think it's brilliant.
If I had to recommend a song to anyone to listen to by Iron Maiden, it would never be Purgatory.
Oh dear God.
I don't think it's a bad song, but I think it is very forgettable. And I'm really shocked it was a single. There is much better single fodder on the album. I know it was a single, but was this the one that was a double A-side with Wrathchild? Or
no,
was that Twilight Zone?
Purgatory was a standalone single, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I don't get that. This is such a weird choice for a single.
It's not a choice for a single, but it's a brilliant... I don't say it's not memorable. We've spoken about 2 songs that don't have a chorus, and Purgatory's got an amazing chorus that almost comes out of nowhere, that "Please take me away," after you get that amazing twin guitar line.
Chorus.
What?
Yeah.
Great riff.
Nah.
Amazing twin guitar work throughout.
It's a testament to the songs without a chorus that they're better than Purgatory without having a chorus.
Dear God, it's the worst thing you've ever said to anyone, Sam.
Really? Is this worse than the 7.5 out of 10 for the debut?
It's pushing it. Purgatory, I think, is a phenomenal song. It's melodic.
You're entitled to think that. We just have different views. That's fine.
But also Purgatory is the one song on this record that points to where Maiden were going for me. This is the future direction. It's Purgatory. It's that, and it's one of the few songs where I think Bruce Dickinson would probably do a better job of Purgatory than Paul Di'Anno.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see what you mean about it being a precursor of what's to come. But because it's not what does come. I've very messily phrased that. I'm going to cut that out.
What does come to the album next?
It is a very unformed version of what's to come, and it just doesn't gel for me. Whereas, like, if you look at a track like Murders in the Rue Morgue, that also feels a bit of a precursor of some of the sounds that are to come, and that feels much more engaging. Purgatory just doesn't gel with me, and I don't know. Ultimately, there's no rational reason. I just emotionally don't respond to it very much.
Oh, well, that's. I'm lost for words.
Have I damaged our friendship?
Quite possibly, yeah. Irreparably is the word that springs to mind. Purgatory is...
Well, it's funny because the word is irreparably. So...
Is it? Well,
yeah, there's no I.
It's
not irreparably.
Irreparably. Purgatory is... Well, I think it's brilliant. I absolutely love Purgatory. Worth mentioning that it begins life going back to that demo we spoke about from 1977 in the last episode, the Dennis Wilcock days. There's a snippet of a song from that gig called Floating, which is what Purgatory becomes. But of all the songs we get from those 77 versions, it's the one that undergoes the most radical transformation.
Right.
So the lyrics are the same, but the 77 version is this very half-paced, floaty thing, and the vocal melody's sort of the same, but what the guitars are doing is very different. So again, to say this is Purgatory is an old song is somewhat misleading because the way it sounds in 81, with different lyrics, I think it would almost be unrecognisable from that early song Floating. But yeah, I love Purgatory. I think it's great, and I would be very happy. I was trying to think of some kind of elaborate metaphor for being happy then, but I would be very happy indeed if Maiden played Purgatory live.
I would rather be in Purgatory than hear it live.
Oh, sing. Well, on to track 10. Drifter, which again, now Drifter was a staple Iron Maiden song going right back to at least 77. So if you'd seen Iron Maiden at any point live in the last 4 years, you would know the song Drifter. What do you make of Drifter?
It's not for me. It's a real damp squib of an ending.
A damp squib of an ending. Wow.
I think what I find with Killers is, for the most part, even though I had criticisms of, say, like Genghis Khan, the first half of it is a fantastically strong album. And then I just think the bottom starts to fall out.
Oh.
I realise that may not be the typical narrative, but that's how I feel, man.
What? And feelings can be incorrect.
No, they can't. Your feelings are valid. Don't listen to Plevin. He is not a qualified mental health professional.
There are right feelings and there are wrong feelings. And Sam has expressed some classic wrong feelings. So, for me, I will say this about Drifter. It's a very...
boring.
No, it's a 70s hard rock song, right? It's not even really, it's not a heavy metal song, particularly, at least as we come to know metal. It's a bouncy, rollicking, fun 70s hard rock song that's, in a way, it's a very stereotypical Nwabum, new wave British heavy metal track, right? But it's just so fun. I just like it. I like that odd descending riff, that da-na-na-na-na-na, and then the way it goes into this really bouncy, fun... That's a really odd album closer for a band like Maiden. I mean, not at this point, because I guess Iron Maiden's a similarly upbeat album closer, but, tending to finish as they would go on to doing these big, epic, sprawling atmospheric tracks. Drifter, this nice, short, sharp, it's just really fun. I just find it very enjoyable. Again, it was also, I believe it was one of the encore songs in the Early Days tour in 2005.
That's surprising.
Yeah, I was loving life. I was like, I'm playing Drifter, this is amazing, and just... sort of slightly silly throwaway lyrics of "Gotta play my song, won't be long." It's all a bit silly and fun, but I really like it. Drifter is just a rollicking, enjoyable hard rock song,
and I think
in the vein of Thin Lizzy or Status Quo, even. And I know Maiden fans probably won't like hearing the word Status Quo in the same breath as Iron Maiden, but it sort of is. But I think
that's also where some of our divergence in opinions comes from, right? Is that you probably have more of an appreciation for the 70s style songs by Maiden than I do. Whereas if I want 70s style hard rock, I'll listen to, I don't know, Zeppelin, Purple, whatever. I won't listen to Maiden. What I kind of always want from Maiden is admittedly the most stereotypical Iron Maiden.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah.
And something like Drifter is not that.
No,
so I can appreciate, I guess with both of these albums, I can appreciate a lot about them. But they're never quite what I want from Iron Maiden anyway.
Yeah, and I think particularly as, we can't ignore the fact this is the band's second album. And, we will talk about the critical reception of the album in a bit. But even I enjoy Drifter. It's impossible, I think, to argue that this represents some kind of real progression from the first album.
Yeah.
In many respects, it's the opposite. It almost feels... These songs, okay, the production's better, but the style is almost more dated than some of the stuff we get on the debut.
This album is Iron Maiden Part 2, essentially.
Yeah, it is.
Better production, but a lot of these songs are off-cuts. A lot of these songs are, if they're not off-cuts, they're retoolings of things that have existed for a good solid 5 years already at this point.
Yeah. But also, and I think this is accident more than design, but I think the things that they reserve for the second album often feel more dated than the things that end up on the first. In some respects, I think Drifter's a good example of a song that is very indebted to Maiden's 70s influences, and I think the stuff on the debut album feels more innovative a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think a song like Drifter is the kind of song that if you had more recent material, you would drop Drifter in favour of that.
Yeah, quite possibly. I personally am glad that didn't happen, but yeah.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. But with the debut, you're going to go with your best foot forward. You're going to put the most vital sounding songs in it. And then if that means for album 2, you're kind of left with the songs that didn't quite make that cut. I think Killers feels like that quite a lot, especially in the second half.
Yeah, there are moments I would agree with that. Yeah. So before we have a look at how the album was received when it came out, let's quickly go over, because there aren't many singles to discuss from this record. We've got 2. So the first single, released 2nd of March 1981, we've got a double A-side of Twilight Zone and Wrathchild. And even though it's a double A-side, it always feels to me like Wrathchild is the B-side for some reason.
Yeah, although that's odd because Wrathchild was the one that had a video. They cut out the live clip from the Live at the Rainbow show
they did,
and used that as the video supporting the single.
I think it's just because Riggs's cover
I think
art,
they didn't have money for Twilight Zone.
No, basically. But also Derek Riggs's cover art clearly that takes lyrical inspiration from Twilight Zone rather than Wrathchild. So maybe that's why. But yeah, double A-side, which again is something of novelty for Maiden. Twilight Zone apparently originally was going to be the B-side.
Right.
For Wrathchild, but the band reckoned it was too good to be relegated to B-side status, and so then it's bumped up to double A-side. In some respects even becomes the main focus with Riggs' artwork.
That makes sense, because one of the questions I had for you was why wasn't this song on the original album? And if it was intended for a B-side, that explains it. Which is a shame, because I think this is stronger than Drifter or Purgatory, personally.
Yeah, so Twilight Zone actually is recorded in a different session to the Killers album session.
Right, okay.
So I'm not even sure. I don't even think I would be 90% sure. I don't think Twilight Zone's actually even produced by Martin Birch. I think it's produced by Iron Maiden and whoever the engineer was in the studio at the time.
I think what I really like about this song is it has a really, and maybe this is an unfavourable comparison for them, but it has a really strong Judas Priest vibe to me between like the sort of the swagger of the main riff and Paul Di'Anno going into a much higher range a few times in the song. Like, it feels very Screaming for Vengeance era Priest to me. The
vocals are very Priest. The guitars to me are more Thin Lizzy.
Yeah, I can see that as well.
Dun, 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 that sort of bounce and... Yeah, but I really like Twilight Zone. Good song.
Yeah, I think it's a real shame this isn't on the original version of the album.
Yeah, which is very different to what we said about Sanctuary and Women in Uniform. Where we said, we like Sanctuary, but we probably thought the debut album was more cohesive for it not being on there.
Yeah.
Whereas you're right, I think I could at least pick 2 songs off this album that I would swap this in for.
Are they Purgatory and Drifter?
No. Then they're not Purgatory or Drifter, because they are classics. I mean, Prodigal Son, you could have 2 Twilight Zones. Just play Twilight Zone twice. I prefer that. That'd be good.
No, I can't deny that.
But it does, in terms of how it performs, it does all right. It's top 40 again, so it goes in at 31. No Top of the Pops appearance, though, because there was a strike going on at the time, so there was no Top of the Pops that week. Also, it's our friend Dave Murray getting a writing credit alongside Steve Harris of Twilight Zone. Yeah. Little Davey Murray getting another writing credit.
And not writing about sex workers.
Not writing about sex workers, no.
Demonising them.
The only his second writing credit for Iron Maiden at this point. Although...
That is a weird discography to your name.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. But the artwork itself was criticised for being sexist, because I'm not sure if you can conjure it up in your mind.
I can, and I've read the criticism, so...
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. For the listeners at home, if you want to conjure this up in your mind or just Google it, you've got... I think it's quite a cool artwork, actually. So there's a woman wearing a nightie and a sort of phantom Wuthering Heights-esque ghostly Eddie appearing through the window. And I guess the allegation of sexism here is that this is Eddie preying on a woman in her room.
The allegation is that Eddie's a bit rapey, basically. Which is not what the song talks about on any level.
No,
Like, this is very much a song about someone's lover coming back from the dead to talk to them.
Well, exactly.
And the cover speaks to that perfectly.
And if you look at the details, there was a note on the desk of the girl saying, or that her, not the desk.
Well, there's a little photo frame with Eddie in it.
Yeah,
on her.
Well, yeah, and it
makeup
says
table.
to Charlotte, love Eddie. So it's clearly
Yeah.
a lover trying to contact her from the dead. What's a dressing table? That's the word I'm looking for. Is that what I'm looking for?
Yeah, dressing table, makeup table.
Yeah. Another little tidbit of information about the artwork. This single is the first appearance where we get Dr. Death on the. See, I look at your face, you're like,
Who the hell's Dr.
Yeah,
Death?
I think most Iron Maiden fans are like, who the hell's Dr. Death? Dr. Death, in the Riggs years, he becomes like a little weird Easter egg. He's a little Grim Reaper.
Okay.
That is often just like dotted in the background somewhere. Like he's on the back of Power Slave, Little Grim Reaper. There's a Little Grim Reaper on Life After Death somewhere. And he's affectionately known as Dr. Death.
So I actually have Live After Death right next to me, and I'm just looking at it.
Is it on the back somewhere?
Oh, he is on the back.
Yeah, so
okay.
Dr. Death is the Grim Reaper.
Sure.
So, yeah, Twilight Zone, a good, again, like one of the forgotten Iron Maiden singles in many ways, isn't it?
I think this
Disappears
is a
from live
probably
sets.
underrated track. And just going back to the cover art, I think that sort of almost willful misinterpretation of what the cover art is meant to be is something that's going to set up the next couple of years for Maiden and the sort of satanic panic that surrounds a lot of their stuff.
And talking about the song essentially disappears from the Maiden live set quite quickly and almost disappears, doesn't feature on any Maiden best-ofs. It's sort of gone out of the popular consciousness of Maiden fans. But when a certain Bruce Dickinson auditions for Maiden, in the public domain, there is a 3-track audition tape that is audition.
Found it on YouTube already,
featuring Twilight Zone. And he does a phenomenal Twilight Zone.
It's Bruce. It all sounds phenomenal.
Well, yeah, but also...
I have no biases here.
But we'll discuss this in more detail next episode, but tracks like Wrathchild and Killers, Bruce does them amazingly well, but Paul Di'Anno owns those songs.
Yeah,
you know what
definitely.
I mean? Whereas I think Twilight Zone, again, pointing to where Maiden would go, you can imagine Steve Harris listening to Dickinson doing that, whoa, I'm dying, and just thinking, wow, okay, this is what we want.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the single that comes out just before the album comes out, right?
Yes.
So
but actually it comes out just after the album.
Just after the album out, okay.
Again, one of Steve's criticisms, there's no lead single for this.
Yeah, that's an odd move, but then the second single is Purgatory. Right?
Yeah, and it comes out 15th of June, so it's like months after.
Bizarre, but
yeah,
okay.
Well, the whole thing's a bit bizarre, Purgatory, other than the fact I think it's got a very cool artwork.
Does have a very cool artwork, and I guess the trivia of the artwork is that the original artwork for it was what became the Number of the Beast.
Yeah. So
Rod Smallwood was essentially saying to Derek Riggs, "That's too good.
That's
for
too
a single.
good for a single." But then Riggs comes up with something that's also brilliant.
It's just the devil's face cracking away to reveal Eddie. It's pretty iconic.
Wicked. Yeah,
it's great artwork.
I used to have it on a T-shirt, and sadly, I don't know what's happened to that T-shirt. But the B-side of Purgatory is just Genghis Khan. So there's a sense that... But I think it's interesting, because by the time they get to Purgatory, Steve is going, that's it. That is all my songs now.
Yeah.
All my songs are either on albums or the B-sides. I have the well
the
is...
tank is empty, yeah.
Yeah, dry.
Yeah.
So, stuff it. Just show Genghis Khan as a B-side.
Just give him the not Transylvania instrumental.
Yeah, which is, if you're an Iron Maiden
I can't even be bothered to do a cover. I'm done.
Unless you want... Well, yeah, exactly. Unless you just happen to really like Derek Riggs' artwork, there is no impetus for you as a fan to buy this if you've got Killers, is there? Because you've just
absolutely not.
got all these songs. So, yeah, I don't actually have a chart positioning for Purgatory. I sense it didn't chart particularly highly, because people are idiots and it's failed to appreciate the brilliance of Purgatory.
Maybe people shared my views. Who knows?
No, quite possibly, yeah. Maybe. I don't know.
So that's the 2 singles done. Then what's the charting for the overall album?
Well,
how does that fare?
Well, let's, before we get into the chart, let's have a quick look at the critical reception at the time.
Okay.
Because this is an interesting talking point and a departure from the original, I think. So, Paul Di'Anno's take on Killers is it was the best album. Oh, no, sorry, I'm getting confused. Paul Di'Anno doesn't particularly rate Killers that highly.
Okay.
So talking about the debut album, he says that the first album, i.e. Iron Maiden, was the best album I did with the band, without a doubt. I didn't think the second album was a patch on it. He's even said, I don't like Killers.
Okay.
Steve Harris, on the other hand, says, I think you could argue the first album was the strongest, but I tend to disagree, really. Now, well, I think Steve loves every single Iron Maiden album, basically. So,
I mean, if we're talking about biased sources, Steve Harris is always going to be one.
Yeah, so Paul doesn't look back on the sound particularly favourably. Steve tends to defend it. What's interesting is that the music press at the time, the reviews for this album were much more mixed. I mean, mixed bordering on hostile. There was a particularly notorious review that appeared in Sounds magazine, and bear in mind Sounds was, well, there's no equivalent now of a music magazine that had that. But it was up there with The NME and Melody Maker, one of the biggest music publications.
Am I right in thinking that Sounds was sort of the foundation ground for Kerrang?
It was, yeah, exactly, because Jeff Barton and all those people wrote there who went off to form Kerrang. But there was a writer for Sounds at the time called Robbie Miller who gave Killers, bear in mind Sounds were the champions of Iron Maiden up to this point, gave it a 1-star review.
Ooh.
Robbie Miller said it's more of a failure than a triumph. She described it as well dodgy with lots of tiddly guitar.
I mean, part of me does love the description of any Iron Maiden song as involving tiddly
guitar. I mean, and that's
such a fantastic put down.
But tiddly guitars are great.
I know, but like no one wants their guitar leads likened to tiddlywinks.
There is
but yeah, that is brutal.
But there's a backstory here in that Paul Di'Anno apparently was dating Robbie Miller, the writer, but broke off the relationship shortly before that review went to press. So Steve,
I could see that colouring your perception of the album.
Steve Harris's take is that he's annoyed at Paul Di'Anno for leaving this
for myriad reasons.
Yes,
really.
for myriad reasons, but in particular for leaving this writer before she put a review into press. But it wasn't the only bad review by any means. There was a sense that there was a growing backlash against Iron Maiden and the new wave of British heavy metal in general, in the sense that Maiden perhaps had been overhyped or a kind of jealousy. So there were lots of people, gave this album a bit of a kicking at the time. One of the few defenders is, again, our good friend from the first episode, writer Malcolm Dome.
Yay!
Who, rest in peace, Malcolm Dome, by the way. Not sure we addressed that in the first episode.
No, we didn't.
He passed away quite recently.
Domey is a legend.
Indeed, yeah. And he at the time was writing for Record Mirror. Now, this is where... Remember I promised you a really scintillating Metallica fact?
You did. And I've been waiting.
This is Malcolm Dome's review of Killers. Bear in mind, Metallica do not form as a band until the end of this year.
Right.
Malcolm Dome gave it Killers a great review. He said, this album doesn't so much allay my fears as exercise them in an atmospheric ether of rhapsodic anger, an urgency that is Iron Maiden restaking their dynastic claim to the crown and sceptre of Metallica. He uses the word Metallica in his review of Killers. Interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah, in the phrase, restaking their dynastic claim to the crown and sceptre of Metallica.
I mean, you could
Metallica weren't a band at this point.
No, I know, but you could just put that down to posh Britishisms.
You could put that down to posh Britishisms.
And because, I mean, the narrative behind the band name Metallica has always been metal plus liquor equals metal, liquor, Metallica.
Yeah, that's been the story, but we know Lars was someone who read
we know Lars is full of lies.
Well, of course he devoured the British music
lies,
press, right? And he knows Malcolm, or he went on to form good relationships with people like Malcolm Dome.
I find it suspicious.
Yeah, I find it hard to believe that Lars, or at least someone in the band, wouldn't have read that review. But anyway, Malcolm Dome defends this album, and he goes on to point out there's an awful lot of jealousy around the band at this time. Def Leppard, again, who'd been really hyped in 1980, were getting a kicking in 81. Various other things. Our good friend from the first episode, Neil Kay. Do you want an update on how Neil Kay's doing?
I suppose I do. For the listeners,
Yeah, for the listeners.
In between these episodes, I watched the TV program that Blevin recommended. That chronicles Maiden in their first couple of years around the debut release. I can't remember the name of the TV program.
20th Century Box, isn't it?
20th Century
Which also
Box,
features, apparently was presented by Danny Baker.
Yeah.
I didn't appreciate that.
So if you watch on
around.
YouTube, you see Danny Baker at the beginning, which is also surprising. But yeah, Neil Kay is in that, and he does not come across well. He is the epitome of metal gatekeeping. And yeah, I mean, in some ways it's sort of timeless because obviously metal gatekeeping hasn't gone away completely, but I did not warm to him, Blevin. I did not warm to him.
No, he comes across as
He's
a bit
of a
prat in that.
toolbox.
Yeah. So if you haven't listened to that episode, Neil Kay was a DJ at a hard rock and metal club that he sort of founds.
The Heavy Metal Funhouse.
The Heavy Metal Funhouse, or to give it its official name, the Bandwagon Heavy Metal Soundhouse. And is seen as
awful name,
absolutely abysmal name for a nightclub. But in his own slightly pretentious, slightly elevated way, becomes seen as like a standard bearer for the new wave of British heavy metal, an influential figure in the sense that apparently record companies would go to him and say, who should we sign, because he was seen as he was seen as the authority on this new wave of British heavy metal, you could call it, that was emerging at the time.
More catchily.
The Wobham. That's great. Wish I'd thought of that. But after his sort of glory years in 1980, the Bandwagon comes under new ownership and he is removed or ousted as DJ.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay. I know. Poor Neil Kay. So, and they're actually, apparently outside the Bandwagon, there are picket lines of people saying reinstate Neil Kay, and Steve Harris is one of the people. I think he writes a letter to a music publication demanding Neil Kay's reinstated, but he's not, is the short story. And he tries to restart the Bandwagon somewhere else, and it doesn't quite work. And there's a sense that Neil Kay's fall from grace is perhaps emblematic of the sort of the fall from grace for the new wave of British heavy metal more generally.
It's quite interesting that in the span of a year, this genre is already starting to fall flat on its face.
Yeah,
like in the eyes of press and mainstream narratives, whereas around 1980, this sounds like a proper movement.
Yeah,
that backlash is quick.
Well, it is, but I guess it's the pace of that metal and music's evolving at this time, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
You only have to wait until 1983, and you've got thrash metal, and it's it's all happening very quickly. But yeah, so whereas it felt like not an easy route to the top for Maiden to begin with, but once that album comes out, 1980, okay, they lose Dennis Stratton, but otherwise it's this perfect year, top 10 album.
Yeah.
Incredible praise and acclaim. They don't get that second time round. It's a much more mixed, bordering on hostile response to the second record. But in recent years, that has changed, or the attitudes towards Killers have changed quite a lot, considerably. For a lot of die-hard Maiden fans, presumably, hello people listening to this, people tend to, Killers often comes up in those, social media discussions, what's your favourite Maiden album? Killers is often cited as, many people's favourite. And also in some big publications have ranked Killers very highly in their lists of greatest Maiden records of all time. So Kerrang in 2020 ranked Killers as the 7th greatest Maiden album of all time.
Wow.
The debut was at number 11.
Unacceptable.
Respected music journalist Dom Lawson in 2021, so only last year, for Louder Sound, he ranked every single Iron Maiden album. He also put Killers at number 7.
Come on, Dom.
Again, above the debut, which he put at number 8.
Dom.
Stereo Gum, reasonably well respected.
Yeah.
Music publication, Stereo Gum. Put this at number 5, Killers.
What?
Above Seventh Son of a Seventh Son.
No, that's too far, Blevin. That's too far.
I mean, that is...
That's sacrilege.
That's an opinion. Have Distorted Sound ranked the Maiden albums? It feels that every music publication has to do it at some point.
I don't think they have, but
Okay.
I will check in with the editor and find out.
Once we get to the end of this, maybe that can be a pitch. Hey,
Hi, James. Please, can I rank all the Maiden albums? I'm going to have unpopular opinions.
the definitive Maiden guide.
Do you want some social media abuse? Because I can fester it for you. I think so. There's something quite interesting about Killers retrospectively being quite high up in people's album rankings because, and I don't mean this in a judgy way whatsoever, but there is a part of me that feels that considering where it sits in the Maiden discography and considering how it was received at launch, people might think, oh, it's kind of the avant-garde specialist pick of an album, so I'm going to put it higher because that shows how knowledgeable I am of Maiden. And as I mentioned before, I hadn't really heard Killers in full until 2 weeks ago, and I am someone who, for all my criticisms, I am a big Iron Maiden fan and have been listening to them for 20 years. So, yeah, I definitely think, to be a bit judgy, there's a little bit of pretension that comes with ranking Killers so highly. Because unless you were someone who was there at the time, I find it hard to believe it's better than Seventh Son of the Seventh Son.
Yeah, or
better than the debut.
Yeah, if you like Maiden in more 70s hard rock mode and this is your favourite incarnation of Maiden, good for you. Like, I'm not taking anything away from that. But you're right, there's a sense, it's like people who say Hell Awaits is the best Slayer album.
You're wrong.
Well, yeah, but Hell Awaits is great, but you're right. But there's a sense
of...
But you're wrong. Like, it's obviously not as good as Rain and Blood, is it? Like, don't be silly now, come on. And, I sort of feel
Simmer down.
Yeah, I feel that way about Killers. People who will pick something a bit willfully obscure, knowing that an awful lot of Iron Maiden fans won't know Innocent Exile or what have you, and there's a sense of, my favourite Iron Maiden song's Drifter, because,
Yeah.
I'm a massive Iron Maiden fan. You've probably never heard Drifter before, have you? No, because you've not listened to Killers, because you're not cool. Maybe.
Look, I'm not cool, but I've now listened to
Killers. Well, good. No,
and I wouldn't put it in my top 10.
Yeah, we'll have to reserve judgment, I guess.
Well, also, after we do all the albums, seeing as we're putting numerical ratings to everything, I genuinely don't know what my top 10 is going to be anymore.
Yeah, I thought I did, but I'm not so sure. But what I do know is where Killers as an album charted in the UK album charts. We should probably apologise to, if you, for whatever reason, happen to be listening to this from an overseas territory. I just haven't got time to go through literally every single country in the world telling you where every Maiden
that would take
album
far
charts.
too long.
So, firstly, do you know, or where do you think Killers charted in the album charts?
I'm going to assume that at this point, Maiden already have like a pretty fervent fan base that, true to form for the next 30 years, just puts everything quite highly in the charts because they purchase it. But having said that, this is the era of people purchasing lots of things, and I think you said the debut came in at number 4.
Yeah.
So 3?
It comes at its highest chart positioning, Killers, is number 12.
Ooh.
Yeah, which it's one of only 2 albums in the history of the band's career that doesn't make the top 10 in the UK.
I would have assumed it would have just rated higher by virtue of like having an established fan base.
Nope, it doesn't even ever break the top 10.
That's going to be pretty disheartening for Maiden.
Well, yeah, you'd think so. This isn't because
They don't give a shit.
but they say they don't, but I reckon they do. But what do you reckon the other Maiden album is that doesn't make the top 10 in the UK?
Sorry, Blades. It's going to be a Blades album.
Yeah.
But the second one, which I always forget which the second
Virtual
one
11.
is. Yeah,
Virtual 11, I think.
Because people would have bought the first one on Curiosity, and then with their curiosity sated, they'll be like, never again.
Yeah, well.
Sorry, Blaze. I love your voice, but sorry.
Not making that mistake again. So yeah, Killers goes in at number 12. Just as a little bit of fun. Because, a little bit of fun, isn't it? What else do you think was in the chart? February 1981, the album chart.
Well, as we established last week, I have no understanding of music pre-85.
What I would say, a little clue, one of these people has already popped up, and there are some absolutely great records in the top 10 this year.
Is it Genesis again?
You're very close. Like, you're hot, you're on fire.
Yes.
No, you
I had that guess
you are
last week.
hotter. You've gone further away. You are so hot with Genesis.
Phil Collins. Right, that
with
makes more sense.
So at number 1, Phil Collins with Face Value, which is his debut solo album, like a genuinely amazing record. Face Value, it's great.
Never heard it.
I'm going to say it's better than Killers. Face Value by Phil Collins. I honestly think it is. It's so good.
That's fine. I think there's many things better than Killers.
Number 2, you've got Double Fantasy by John Lennon, which is John Lennon's double album.
Presumably posthumous at that point, right?
When was
What
Lennon
year did
shot?
Lennon die?
Get Googling, Sam. Number 3, and I said this has popped up already, Difficult to Cure by Rainbow, which is Joe Lynn Turner's debut album as Rainbow frontman. So yeah, Rainbow, the top 3 album in the UK, which is pretty impressive.
For context, John Lennon's dead.
He is dead.
He died in 1980.
That maybe explains why he's doing so well in the charts.
Yeah.
I mean, that and being a musical legend. But
yeah. I mean, he's not the best Beatle, but he's all right.
But yeah,
he's no George.
Difficult to Cure by Rainbow at number 3, presumably helped along by I Surrender, which was the big hit single off Difficult to Cure.
Never even heard it.
Oh, you've never heard I Surrender?
Nah, mate.
I surrender. I surrender.
I still haven't heard it. I've just heard this horrible rendition.
Jesus Christ, I can't believe you've not heard I Surrender. I mean, you need to get on that quickly.
It's 9 years before I'm born. 8 years before I'm born.
Yeah, but it's a classic song, I Surrender by Rainbow.
Is it? It's like Since You've Been Gone.
No, but it's in a similar vein. It's also written by Russ Ballard, I believe.
But it doesn't have Graham Bonnet.
No, it's got Joe Lynn Turner.
No, but it doesn't have
Graham Bonnet.
I love Graham Bonnet's voice. What a voice. That first Alcatraz album. Sorry, tangent.
Right. Not in the top 10, Alcatraz, funnily enough. But we've got Vienna by Ultravox. Number 4.
That's cool.
Oh, Vienna. Moving Pictures by Rush at number 5. I mean, that is a great record.
So, Rush are a bit of a blank spot for me, but I am surprised that they're so high up in the UK chart.
Yeah, number 5. Well, Tom Sawyer was the big song off Moving Pictures. So,
yeah, and even I know Tom Sawyer.
Yeah, it's got Tom Sawyer on it. It's a great record front to back. Number 6, The Jazz Singer by Neil Diamond. Number 7, Kings of the Wild Frontier by Adam the Ants, classic 80s. Number 8, Dance Craze original soundtrack. Number 9, Stray Cats by the Stray Cats. Number 10, you've got Dire Straits, Making Movies, good record. 11, we've got Manilow Magic. Do you know who that's by?
Barry Manilow.
By Barry Manilow. So it's got some good alliteration there. Manilow Magic. And yeah, then we get to Killers by Iron Maiden, number 12. So yeah, it doesn't break the top 10. It does perform better in the USA though than the debut album.
Okay.
So it sells 200,000 copies in the States, which apparently is 4 times as many as their debut sold.
Right.
And it reaches 78 on the Billboard chart, which is nothing compared to what they go on to do, but was a big improvement.
It's a much bigger market for them to try and crack. So,
and I don't think the debut album cracked the Billboard chart at all. So it seems to do better internationally, and apparently it sells more copies overall than the debut.
Right.
But yeah, from an UK point of view, Steve Harris goes, well, it's sold more copies. You know, the difference between 4 and 12 in terms of sales isn't that much, which is probably true.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to think they might not have been a bit disappointed.
Yeah,
maybe.
Definitely.
So let's take it home. Man of the match, best of the beast, worst of the rest, and rating and ranking. Man of the match.
Clive Burr for me. As I said before, just his statement impact on the album is really, really noticeable. It's the thing I picked out most about Killers, is that the drums are just phenomenal. I'm
glad you said Clive Burr, because I was going to go, I really couldn't decide between Clive Burr or Paul Di'Anno, but since you've gone Burr, I'll go Di'Anno.
Okay.
So, because I think, the more going back and revisiting this, I was like, is this one of the best metal vocal performances of all time? Like, I honestly was just like,
no.
Yes, it is. I honestly think it is.
Absolutely not. It's very good. But come on. I mean,
so distinctive, and
we're a few years out from like Michael Kiske existing. So
but it's a different ball game. It's like comparing.
Yeah. But
You know,
when you say best metal performances, metal's a pretty wide net to be casting.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's like saying Michael Kisker's a better singer than Glenn Benton. It's like, well, it's totally different. They're not competing in the same field, I don't think.
Yeah, but I mean, Iron Maiden and Halloween are not that different. They are competing in the same field.
No, but they wouldn't become that different. They're reasonably different-ish. Anyway, but yeah. Paul Diano for me.
Okay.
Best of the Beast, worst of the rest. So your standout track, if you could only keep one, and your track you would bin off if you had to bin off one, or if you just wanted to bin off one.
Well, as we've discussed, there are several I would bin off. My big keep is Wrathchild. I just think that's such a iconic track. I realise we've used the word iconic a lot.
It is, yeah. And there's a reason it's the only song that survived in the set list through various years. But Bruce
and
Blaze,
you could probably make
Bruce again.
a pretty fair argument that part of the reason why I love it so much is because it has been present in Iron Maiden's life in the 21st century.
And it's the only one of these
other Killers songs aren't.
That would, or indeed has, appeared on a Maiden best of.
Yeah.
You know, yes, that's a very good pick. And your worst of the rest?
Probably Drifter, I think.
Wow. Okay. My best of the beast is Purgatory. I'm keeping Purgatory. It's honestly my favourite song on this.
Kind of wish I removed Purgatory.
It's my favourite. Don't you dare, Sam. Don't you dare.
Lopped it right off.
Get your hands off Purgatory.
Lance it like a boil from the album.
It's my favourite song on this record. Yeah, and because it's not played live and it doesn't appear on compilations or live albums, you've got to go to Killers to find it, and I love it. It's so good. And my worst of the rest, easy peasy, Prodigal Son.
I mean, that's fair. I can't argue with that. I just think there's something novel about Prodigal Son.
Because you know, I think it's fair to say I like this record more than you do, but I actually agree with a lot of what you say. But actually, even the bits of it, I'm like, objectively, this is a bit average, but I still quite enjoy spending time in its company. Prodigal Son's the song I go, oh, actually, I'm bored of it. Like, just go away. Like,
that's fair.
It just bores me. Which ends us to conclude with our rating and ranking. So, given the fact you gave the debut album 7.5 out of 10, I'm dreading to think what you're going to give is going to be you and like that Robbie Miller's person from Sound.
No, it's nowhere near that bad. I think my ultimate thought of this album is it is a broadly good album. For as critical as I am about it, it's a good album. I think the production is a real step up. But I think the songwriting is a step down. So it's a weird trade-off where...
And again, agreed. Yeah, I'd agree with both those points, yeah.
Sonically, it's better. Material-wise, it's weaker. But it's not a bad album by any stretch. And as I said before, that first half in particular, I think, is really strong. So I would go... I'm going 6.5.
Okay.
And like, just to be clear, 6.5 is a fine score. It is a fine album. It's not bad, but it's also not mind-blowing.
Okay.
Stop looking so hurt.
When, as mentioned, as a staff writer for Distorted Sound, do you want to tell the listeners what you gave the reissue of Renegade by Hammerfall when that came out of 10? Just as a benchmark for what Sam considers good. Hammerfall, I like them, but the very run-of-the-mill Swedish power metal band. I believe you gave that 7 out of 10, was what you told me. For a moment, I thought you'd just be looking up my reviews to use against me. I seem to remember you... I mean, I should start doing this, just to... Please don't. I don't have a formal ranking system. I seem to remember you said anything, you gave it... If you ask me, I think rating things by numbers is stupid and pointless. But it's just how the world works. I'm looking at the review currently, bear with me. Okay, and it would just be interesting to see, wouldn't it, listeners, if Sam thinks that the run-of-the-mill power metal album Renegade by Sweden's Hammerfall is in fact a better record than Killers, or indeed even as good as the first Iron Maiden album, which would be a real... the suspense is being added because my internet connection has decided to not load. Oh, it's loading. 1 second. Here we go. He's scrolling. I'm just painting an oral picture. It is a 7 out of 10. So, just as a little benchmark for Sam's rating system, Renegade by Hammerfall is as good as the first Iron Maiden album.
Well, no,
not as good
remember,
as
I gave
Killers.
the first Maiden album 7.5.
Okay, so
That is better than Renegade.
it's half a mark better than Renegade by Hammerfall.
Yeah.
But Renegade is still better than Killers.
I think I'm comfortable with that, to be honest.
Wow.
Don't get me
Okay.
wrong, like, something like Renegade doesn't exist without Iron Maiden, full stop.
No.
But I probably got more enjoyment out of Renegade than I did Killers. But
Well, in that case, that's fair enough. I can't argue that.
but overall, I would say the high points of Killers are higher than the high points of Renegade, but Renegade's more consistent.
Okay, yeah.
That's why I feel quite strongly that numbers being
Yeah,
arbitrary
and-
it's an unfair way to mark an album in some ways. Yes, it's an easy shortcut to understanding, okay, this is where it sits on the quality meter, but actually when you're talking about somewhere between 30 and 60 minutes of music, there's highs and lows.
And I guess as well, when we...
So screw you, Blev.
yeah, but and I guess, I'm sort of having torn you down. I'm going to build
What's
you
your
back
beef
up
with
now.
Renegade anyway?
I love Renegade. I think it's really good.
Right,
But
exactly.
it's just not in the same league as the first two Maiden albums, I don't think. But
It's better than Killers.
it's obviously not better than Killers. But we are rating these albums. We're not necessarily comparing Iron Maiden against any other metal band. We're rating these albums against each other, aren't we? So
Yeah.
we're talking about one of the best discographies in the world of heavy metal, in my opinion.
And look, I know you're deeply traumatized by me giving the debut a 7.5, but as I said at the time, it's because there needs to be, relative to the rest of the Iron Maiden discography, room to grow or room to fall. If you just give everything an 8 or a 9, then what's the point in us dedicating hours to this pointless, meaningless exercise?
just to talk about how great Maiden are all the time.
I don't wanna.
That's why I would give this album 7.5 for exactly the reasons you said. I think the production's a step up. Other than Prodigal Son, which I said, I can take or leave. I really enjoy this album's company, and actually, because these songs
actually spoke to this album, and it enjoys your company.
Oh, thank
too.
you. Oh, shucks. Thanks, Killers. But because you don't hear these songs in any other format, you don't hear them on compilations, you don't hear them on live albums. I go back to this album a lot because there's always a kind of newness, and there's always little things you don't get. There are a couple of other Maiden albums I like for a similar reason, but objectively, it's not as strong as the debut, I don't think, in the songwriting sense at least. Compared to Maiden albums we're going to go on to talk about, it's not as strong as those as those either. So yeah, it's a solid, enjoyable 7.5 for me, which makes the ranking a little bit superfluous because I think we've got a league table of 2.
Yeah.
Number
I
one,
mean, we're both saying Iron Maiden's better than Killers.
yeah.
Which I think is the right call.
Okay, so just for the benefit of completism, at number 1, Iron Maiden by Iron Maiden. Number 2, Killers by Iron Maiden.
Yeah, as we progress through this, I'm going to be maintaining a very elaborate spreadsheet that will pull an average of our individual ratings so that between us we can make the definitive Iron Maiden discography rating system. And I'm going to really mess up your averages.
Great.
I think it's going to be the takeout.
Excellent. So, yeah, thus concludeth the podcast. Please send us an email on maidenvoyagerspodcast@gmail.com.
Levin, no one sends podcasts email.
First, send me...
Use social media, you
send me, did you sit next to Bruce Dickinson on a train? I want to know. Did you see Steve Harris in a Costa? Send me an email.
Come on, Steve Harris doesn't go to Costa.
I mean,
The man has his own private pub in his elaborate mansion.
yeah,
He
but
doesn't go to Costa.
Was it in a services? Everyone uses services, Sam. They're the great leveller. Steve Harris, he's on the M1. He needs a wee. What's he going to do? He hasn't got his own private toilet in his car, so he goes to the services. He gets a Costa.
He's much more salt of the earth. He's at Little Chef or bust.
Ah. If you have seen Steve Harris in Little Chef, please send us an email. Let us know what he was ordering, what he was wearing. Did he have his hair tied back in a ponytail?
Don't encourage
Did he let it?
Levin's
Did he let it
stalker
out?
tendencies.
Or why not tweet us at MaidenPod? Send us. Do you have a copy of Killers? Do you have some interesting Japanese import? Send us a picture.
If you have the original LP of Killers that has all the elaborate Easter eggs that apparently we couldn't spot in the CD.
Yeah,
artwork.
apparently.
We'd love to see that.
Yeah. Did you see Iron Maiden live on the Killers tour? Did you go to the gig in Grimsby where Steve Harris sang the entire set? Let us know.
Yes.
Or do you have a cute cat or dog? Send a picture of that in too.
I'm very in favour of that.
That's also great.
Especially if they're named after Iron Maiden members. Okay, well that's Killers. So that sets the stage for quite a significant new album next, right? Like Number of the Beast, the introduction of Bruce Dickinson. Yeah, exactly.
Number of the what?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's an exciting transition point for Maiden.
Agreed. Should we say goodbye, Sam?
Yes, we should.
Bye.